We're going to kick straight off by getting straight into the card that's just been announced. There's been another part of the Riyadh season being announced, which is the Crescendo card for February of next year. There's some serious fights on there. But before I get into the card, I just wanted to talk about one particular fight which might interest Anthony, which is the matching of Callum Smith versus Josh Buatsi. When you look at that matchup, what does that make you think? Given possibly, Mum would suggest it would have been you.
It just makes me think, like, why? That's my honest question, is why. And
why and what do you mean why?
Because no one wants to see that fight, in all respects. It's a good fight maybe a few years ago, but right now the demand is for me to be, I thought Beterbiev gave him one of his hardest fights. Smith, say again?
Gave you one of your hardest fights?
No, I thought Beterbiev gave him one of his hardest fights.
Okay.
It's on his undercard. It makes sense. The demand is for me and Buatsi. We was trying to make this fight. It didn't happen. I got told time and time again, I want to fight you. Everyone's saying he wants to fight.
But you must know why. I mean, one of the arguments might be that you want too much money.
That's impossible. It's
not impossible. No.
It's not true at all.
What was the reason for the negotiation breakdown? Because, everybody's thinking, we've got you, Buatsi, the fight that's been talked about for so long, and it would make sense on that card with the winner of the Undisputed fighting the winner of that fight, because that's an obvious fight to make. That's been the talk. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Callum Smith comes in. So there must have been a negotiation breakdown at some point. And how was that? Was that just wrong advice from, your side? I mean, where did that come from?
The negotiation breakdown is, I'm at a stage in my career where I want to do, I want to do it fight by fight, or I want to be able to negotiate per fight. I don't want to be tied in to, for the rest of my career, or to say, this is what you're going to get or whatever. Everyone knows how the negotiation game goes. But in terms of this particular fight, Ben Shalom has said to me, Buatsi don't want to fight you. That's the point it's gotten to.
Right.
So, because that's why the fight is not happening. Everyone, if you look at me and my career, I've fought the best people in the division when I shouldn't be even in the ring, on paper.
Well, let's get into your future a bit later on. And,
okay.
I think that probably Josh Buatsi might say something different, so we'll get with that later on. But when you look at this fight, I saw Callum earlier on in the year. He did an interview with me talking about whether he was going to fight again after the fact he'd been beaten in the manner that he'd been beaten by Beterbiev.
Yes.
Who do you think wins this fight?
Based on recent performances, I think Buatsi will win.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree. Where are you on that, Spence?
Yeah, I think that you have to go with the momentum of Joshua Buatsi.
By the way, I never liked betting against the Smith because I think they were brilliant boxing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, look, it was, we're talking 12, 18 months ago, you're talking about Callum Smith, but in the pound-for-pound rankings.
Absolutely.
So you can't go off a performance against Beterbiev and go, the kid's done, because we just don't know that yet. And that's why this fight is so intriguing, because had you asked me before the Beterbiev fight, you'd go Callum Smith would probably be an overwhelming favourite against Joshua Buatsi. I just think the timing right now, momentum right now, if you're a betting man, you go with Joshua Buatsi, but you can't write Smith off for sure. It's a great fight, man, 50-50.
Obviously, on this bill, and as I say, it's an embarrassment of riches, and we'll go through them bit by bit if we want to, but one of the fights that really stands out for me was the heavyweight fight between Zhang and Kabayel. I like Kabayel. I liked him, what he did to the big Russian at Christmas last year.
Makhmudov,
and what he did to Frank Sanchez. People, obviously tipping Frank Sanchez to be someone of significance, and Kabayel, to me, is exciting. This is potentially the battle of the Bakole Dodgers, if you want to make that case, It's a good fight. When you look at that fight, Anthony, what do you think of it, and who do you think is likely to win?
Zhang he's a big puncher. He's a big puncher, southpaw, got a good style, but I don't see him winning that fight.
Yeah.
He got made to look slower and cumbersome against Joseph Parker, didn't he? Against Joe Joyce, he looked like he was lightning fast.
I think Zhang, his big problem is that, down the back end of a stretch of a fight, the penultimate rounds, if you like, he seems to gas and he seems to tire. And Kabayel is one of those guys that just keeps working. He's a workhorse. And he's and he's a great body puncher as well, which takes a lot out of a fighter. And would tell you, as those rounds wear on, you keep getting Zhang to the body, and it's not an easy thing to come through. So, I think you go with the recent performances. Kabayel, for me, would start a favourite in that one for sure.
There's reports where these reports are, but apparently there's reports suggesting that Anthony Joshua could fight the winner of this fight. Do you think that's realistic? Do you think that's part of a rebuild mentality that Anthony Joshua could be becoming part of?
Well, you know, if the reports are true, that's what's happening next. That the winner fights Anthony Joshua. You know, should it happen that way? I don't think so. You know, I think that, you know, we should see Anthony Joshua in with someone like a Deontay Wilder. I've been vocal about that before, and I think that that's probably where he sets to put himself back onto that winning streak again. But I think that he may be jumping the queue by boxing the winner of this one. This is a WBC interim title fight, and all of a sudden Anthony Joshua gets that shot again. It sort of seems unfair on the other fighters that are out there. You mentioned him, Martin Bakole. Where is he? What is happening with Martin Bakole? Surely that guy deserves a shot before anyone else.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, before we get on to answering that question, I wanted to ask you what you've made, Anthony, of the perception. I don't know how realistic it is, but the perception is that Anthony Joshua has chosen not to take the opportunity to fight Daniel Dubois again. You took the opportunity to go and avenge your loss against Lyndon Arthur, and to me that was a brilliant performance, one of the most exciting performances I've seen from a British fighter in some time. You know, like a whirlwind going in there. But what do you make of Anthony Joshua potentially suggesting to himself and his team, advising him not to take the Dubois rematch?
If he did do that, because again, I don't know, speculation, then I would disagree. I wouldn't have went that route. The only time I wouldn't have went that route is if it was like a bigger fight, like Fury or Usyk. But other than that, you got to avenge it, because the way that fight happened, the way it ended, again, that's like a career-ending situation. So I feel like you've got to go back and avenge it.
But is it different? I mean, both of you can answer this question. Is it different? Your loss against Lyndon Arthur was because it was a lacklustre performance during COVID and you weren't yourself, right?
Yes.
Anthony Joshua got knocked out.
Yes, badly.
Is there a big difference in your mindset as a fighter going back and taking a rematch if you've had a bad performance, you know it's been a performance and you've not been yourself, but you haven't been cleaned out? And getting cleaned out the way Anthony Joshua did?
I think it comes down to mentality, maybe what he's been advised. But again,
I'm asking you as a fighter. I mean, I'm not. You haven't really been knocked out in your career, have you? You've been stopped by Kovalev, right?
Yeah, I'm Beterbiev.
But you weren't knocked out. You were.
Yeah. I wasn't knocked out. It was just stopped. Yeah, like
Joshua was knocked out
badly. But I don't know, because I haven't been in that position, so I can only talk about situations I've been in. We spoke about this earlier.
Yeah,
you know, people,
absolutely.
They have an opinion based on a situation they've never been in. But based on what I think of myself, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night.
Right.
Unless I thought that.
So it wouldn't make any difference to you. I mean, ultimately, you only know if you're in that situation. You're right.
Yes.
The only people that can speak to something with authority, really, people can have an opinion.
Yes.
And they can give you an educated, informed one. But the only people that can really speak to it are guys that have done it.
Yes.
Hence the reasons why your opinion is more prevalent than someone like mine's. When you watch the sort of movement around of people, again, I said at the beginning, the battle of the Bakole Dodgers. Where do you think this leaves Martin? We know that he's fighting a potential fight against a Nigerian.
Yeah.
That most people tip him to win and come through easily. There is a point, because we were talking a couple of weeks ago, Spence, about the fact that however they want to dodge him, if that's what they're doing, there is going to be a point where he's going to be the mandatory for one of these belts, potentially the IBF. So they can't get around fighting him forever. But where do you think the fact that these two fighters that were linked to him have gone a different route leaves Bakole, besides fighting potentially a name that's less exciting for people that are watching Bakole develop?
This leaves him as the chairman of the Who Needs Him, Who Wants Him club right now, and they'll only fight him if they have to fight him, and that's where it's at, because Martin Bakole, people know what he's like. I mean, and you all know, you'll have seen him train in the gyms before. Everyone's seen him sparring with all the big names, and the guy does very, very well. Like, no one's going to want to fight him unless they have to, and I think that's where we're at right now. If there's another opportunity for someone to go somewhere else and fight someone else in that heavyweight division, they will do that, because Bakole potentially has the beating of all the heavyweights out there right now.
So it's up to the governing bodies, really, isn't it, not to allow that to happen?
He's highly ranked, Simon, by all the governing bodies now, so it's only a matter of time. If he comes through this next fight, I think it's a final eliminator, actually.
That's my point.
Yeah, it's a final eliminator for, is it the WBC? I think it might be the WBC or one of the titles anyway. Yeah, one of the belts.
I thought it was the IBF. But
it might be, yeah.
But whatever it is, it's one of the belts.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is that if you've got something that really... If Fury beats Usyk, is Fury really going to be fighting Martin Bakole next, or Usyk again, or Anthony Joshua? Ultimately, it leaves Martin Bakole in slightly a difficult position, doesn't it?
It's an interesting one because we've seen there, like, I'm with you. I would have gone with Anthony Joshua there to be great. You know, you're talking about legacies and three-time world, heavyweight champion, etc., etc. You have to go over old ground with Daniel Dubois at this stage of your career because that's where you're at. That's that's my advice. It's a huge
fight. Big fight.
And that opportunity to capture that title again. And I think that's where you go now because he's sort of put himself into this ground and, he's probably been advised by his team to say, right, let's sit this out, watch what happens to Fury and Usyk, see what happens with them. Well, what does that mean? Like, so if Tyson Fury comes through and wins the fight, he then boxes Anthony Joshua, who's coming off a loss to Daniel Dubois? I don't see that happening.
But
so I don't know where...
Would you watch it?
I don't know where...
Would you watch it?
Oh, of course you would. Yeah.
And everyone would. That's why that makes sense.
Absolutely. No doubt about that. What I'm saying is, I don't actually see, you're gambling on depending on what happens with Usyk versus Fury.
Yes.
The trilogy might well be there because, if they come through another thriller like the last one, that would be public demand.
But there's no way... If Fury were to beat Usyk, unless they can't make a commercial deal, there's no way in my mind's eye that Usyk wouldn't want a third fight.
Yeah.
Because he's not tasted defeat.
Yes.
It strikes me as unlikely that a man built the way he is going to accept defeat gracefully and say, well, I'll bow out of defeat.
Yeah.
So it's very likely that, in these sort of hypothetical scenarios that we conjure up, that ultimately, if Fury were to beat Usyk, that the scenario is that they'd fight again. Going into other fights in this undercard, one of the very interesting fights, I mean, it's difficult to say which one of them is not interesting because they're all brilliant, but for the casuals that are looking in at this observation, you've got Virgil Ortiz Jr. fighting Israel Madrimov.
Yep.
Now, I know how good Virgil Ortiz is,
but
lots of people that are watching it from a much more casual position, maybe it's better for you to set up what this fight looks like.
It's not just
what
Virgil,
we're witnessing.
Virgil Ortiz, but Madrimov as well, who's a great fighter. He's coming off a narrow points defeat against Terence Crawford to tell you exactly where that sits. He was like 160, 116, 112, 115, 113. So he had his moments in that fight against Terence Crawford. Dangerous guy. I mean, he's only, 11 fights in or something, but a very good amateur who's turned into a very good professional. Virgil Ortiz Jr., he's coming off a victory, a split decision against Boracek last time out, and it was a tough fight. He picked himself off the floor in the 8th round. He had to ask himself questions, but that might have been the sort of the apprenticeship that he needed before getting into these big fights. That's a 50-50 fight for me. Like you say there, Simon, I'm looking at that card and going, it's one of the best cards, I think, the best card I've ever seen. That could be fight of the night. That is a great fight, that one, because stylistically, both guys like to come forward. Both guys have a high work output. They're technically good as well. It's a great fight. Great fight.
So super welterweight is like middle, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, just getting my bearings as to where I've got Conor
You're
Benn.
going old school with like middle, that's like showing your age.
Yeah, well, probably I am. One of the big fights of the night, and if, again, mischaracterisation because they're all big fights, is obviously Daniel Dubois versus Joseph Parker. I'm personally pleased for Joseph to get this fight because I think ultimately he deserves it. I think his performances against Zhang and against Deontay Wilder have merited it. I think it's the right thing because I think boxing should be meritocratic and he's the next cab off the rank. And whilst people might have wanted to see Anthony in with Daniel Dubois, in the fairness of opportunity for people, Joseph Parker has merited this shot. How do we see this fight going? How do you see this fight going from the outset?
Dubois is a powerful, young, with momentum. He's powerful, he's young, he's got momentum right now. He's just beaten Anthony Joshua in sensational fashion. But Parker, for me, is that ultimate banana skin in the heavyweights right now. So he's got the style. Again, for him, the way he beat Zhang, a lot of people wasn't expecting that. So I do think this is one of them slippery fights. I would have preferred, for the entertainment factor, I would have preferred to see Dubois, AJ again.
Is there any thought process without doing any disservice to Joseph Parker? And I think he's been a much better fighter since he's hooked up with Andy Lee.
Definitely.
I think it's brought something out of him. I think there was observations about him previously that he perhaps didn't let his hands go as much as he could have done. The fight against Anthony Joshua in 2018 was perhaps ruined by the referee and his interventions all the time. But is there anything that about the fighters that he's fought in recent times that reignited his reputation, which is a sort of spent Deontay Wilder, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, and potentially an ageing Zhang that looked very good against Joe Joyce because Joe Joyce was so remarkably telegraphing what he was doing and walking onto shots all day, every day, like he does in previous fights. Are we in danger of overcooking Joseph Parker in this instance?
Definitely not.
No?
I think that Joseph Parker, people forget that he's only a 30-year-old guy himself.
Yeah.
He's a young man himself. He'd done everything at a very young point, and he was written off, totally written off, especially after the Joe Joyce defeat. You looked at that, and it was a bad knockout, and it was a slow, systematic beatdown, really. And I was one of those guys that thought, he can't come back from that.
Yeah.
I think that's probably he's the end to him at the top.
Yeah.
But he's rebuilt and he's done really well. And it's all about, in boxing, Ant will tell you, it's all about confidence rebuilding. And you know, that plays a huge part of it, the psychological side, where he will now believe in himself. Deontay Wilder, wherever he was at in his career, getting a victory over him in the manner that he'd done that is going to be huge for him. Zhang, a guy that is, you know, the most avoided heavyweight or one of the most avoided heavyweights, even still now out there. And he got the victory over him and he went down to the wire, he bit down on his gum shield and pulled out, you know, a great victory there. So, no, he's on an all-time high at the moment. This is a huge banana skin for Daniel Dubois because people are asking, with Joseph Parker, can he take the power of Daniel Dubois and whatnot? Well, there's nothing to suggest he couldn't. Zhang's a heavy-handed guy.
Yep.
You know, going back to Anthony
Who whacks
Joshua.
harder, Joe Joyce or Daniel Dubois?
I think Dubois probably hits harder than Joyce. Joyce is more of like a continuous...
Yeah, attrition.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, without wanting to be facetious, Joe Parker couldn't take Joe Joyce's power.
Well, I would say...
So if Daniel Dubois
Yeah.
is more powerful, is there not an indication that potentially he might not be able to take Daniel Dubois?
I would say Zhang hits harder than Daniel Dubois. So that's where we're at.
Right.
So, you know, and trust me, Parker took some shots from him. And Zhang is heavy-handed. I don't care what anyone says. Yes, Daniel is.
No, we know
Zhang is.
We know he is. Do you not think, because I do, I think this is Daniel Dubois' time now. I think he's come to the ascent at precisely the right time. He's come through all this adversity. People questioned his heart against Joe Joyce. And boxing people questioned it. David Haye questioned it, and people that have been in the ring that know what it's like, not just people that have got a lot to say for themselves like me. But I didn't question his heart. I just questioned why his corner didn't look after him better rather than him being forced to make the decision. Then they questioned his performance, I think, against Kevin Lerena. Then they questioned his performance against Usyk in terms of the fact, did he swallow it in the ninth round? And then people were putting him as an underdog against Jarrell Miller, which I didn't. I thought we should have beaten Jarrell Miller. But the Hrgovic outcome, which I think a lot of people didn't expect him to win. Hrgovic told him he was going to take him to school. Right? Got nowhere near taking him to school. Whacked him with everything he could. But Daniel came back, and then the Joshua manner in which he beats Joshua just details to me that I think he's now there.
He is.
I think the way he walked into that ring at Wembley Stadium with 90,000 fans ready to anoint Anthony Joshua and was ready to go tells me that, and the way that he's communicating with the media, the way he's coming out of his shell now, because he's a shy boy, he's not great in front of the cameras, but he's now becoming more articulate, he's now becoming more confident. I think this is potentially Daniel Dubois' time.
Yeah.
I think it's a very, very difficult fight for both of them, but I think it's a more difficult fight for Joseph Parker.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm totally agree with you on that one as well. I think that ring walk that he had against Anthony Joshua showed the confidence that he had in himself. It was gladiatorial in many ways. You know, where we thought Anthony Joshua was going to be the guy that walked out like that. It was totally the opposite to what we expected. I think the rebuild of Daniel Dubois was really, you know, before the Alexander Usyk loss actually gave him the confidence to believe, actually, I belong at this level. Yeah. You know, because he had his moments in there and maybe, you know, a bit more experience at that level and maybe.
But
not
I think
going
it was the moment in the Jarrell Miller fight, wasn't it? Where he bit down.
Yes.
And people were looking at him and going, are you going to come through this? And he went again. Yeah. And he went again. And he came through it. And I think that's the moment that took him into Hrgovic. And then doing what he did to Hrgovic puts him in that fight against Joshua.
And also, Anthony will, you know, back me on this one, I'm sure, but it's about finding the right trainer, and it's not just about the physicalities of or whatnot. You know, with your trainer, it's about working on that psychological, that mindset and whatnot. And Don Charles has done a great job with him with that. You know, like, spoke to Don in depth about it. I see them training in the gym, and Don says, look, it's not about the physicalities with Daniel because he's an athlete.
It's all there.
You know, it's all there. Yeah. He says, here, it's about believing in himself, and that's what Don's been working on. So a lot of credit goes to him as well.
Yeah. Yes. The main event of the evening, one that you will particularly be looking at, I suspect, Beterbiev versus Bivol 2. Well, did you think Beterbiev won the first fight?
Yes.
You did?
Yeah, I did.
What do you think Bivol's going to have to do in this rematch to get an outcome that he didn't get in the first fight?
I think work rate. I think that was the difference in the first fight. at all times, Beterbiev was, whether it was hitting his gloves, whether it was missing, he was consistently throwing. He was on the front foot the whole fight. So I feel like even though he landed some telling clean shots throughout the fight, I just feel like there's that taking ownership of the fight. And that's what I don't think Bivol did in the first fight.
What do you think happens in this fight? Who are you picking for the second fight? I've got a feeling. I picked Beterbiev in the first fight, one of my few picks that I got right. But I've got a feeling the way Bivol lost that fight, the way he accepted it, that there is going to be a potentially different outcome, maybe a more explosive fight in the second one.
I think it's about
possibly
adaptability, and I think that Bivol is that guy that is, is that boxing IQ. And yeah, all right, he may have got it wrong, and in the moment, it's very difficult to adjust with a guy like Beterbiev. Ant would tell you better than anyone who's this phenomenal monster that just keeps coming at you, and you haven't got time to sort of like adapt and program it. But I think that now he would have gone away, thought about it, and I believe that he is that superstar status, and I think that he can make those minor adjustments, those fine margins that will make the difference between him winning and losing the next one. I'm with you. I think Bivol wins.
For relatability for people, I went to your fights, and I thought it was a brilliant fight. I thought you were great in it.
Thank you.
But I thought that there was a point in the fight where his level went up and you didn't go with him for a variety of reasons.
Yes.
But that's easier for me to say.
Yeah.
I'm very interested to ascertain what it's like to be in there with Beterbiev, to be on the receiving end of someone who's taking... you hit him. You gave him some big licks, didn't you? And he took them. There was a couple of moments where you got him going a little bit.
Yeah.
But he bit down his gum shield and raised the level.
Yeah.
So what's it like being in with him?
It's a consistent pressure. It's almost like you're close to a mirror.
Yeah.
You're trying to escape your reflection. He's
What's
in
the
your
punch
face.
power like?
Do you know what? You know how we spoke about Joe Joyce and Dubois and the difference in like power? For me, he's almost like a train. He's like a train like Joe Joyce.
Physically strong,
physically
but
strong.
not one punch power.
Yeah, physically strong, and it's a consistent wear down. That's why if you look at his record, a lot of his knockouts come after the 6th round.
Yeah.
Because he wears down his opponent, and it's consistent, like accumulation of punches. So,
what's it like being in there for you? Obviously, I'm watching from ringside, watching you having some success, and I'm seeing this guy still there, and I'm seeing you looking confident. You're landing good shots, but bit by bit, he's breaking it down, isn't he? So I'm trying to understand what that feeling is like for you in terms of, are you conscious of this? You've got Tundi in the corner, giving you guidance, telling you what you should and shouldn't be doing. But how is the process of the fight? Are you across the fact that this is becoming more and more challenging and that you're beginning to get tired? How is it playing out in your minds?
There was different points in the fight. Early on, I felt very, very comfortable. And then I think after the 3rd or 4th, the pressure started coming.
Yeah.
And then around the 6th, I started getting comfortable again.
Right.
And then I think the fight ended in the 8th, innit?
Yeah.
And then he caught me with a big shot. And I was like, where did that come from?
Is there a point in your mind, like when you're in there and you're sort of biting down, and we know we were talking about it upstairs, weren't we? When you're going through a 12 round, it feels like you're in the ring for a week, right? Where you have those moments where you're feeling, a month. You feel sorry for yourself. Where this is where the good trainers know there's a time to pick you up, or there might be a time where you're feeling sorry for yourself, but that's the time to pull you out. And that is the point of a good trainer we were talking about. But in that fight, when you're going through those moments and how tough that is there a point where you think he's got to be breaking soon, but then he turns a screw and makes it and gets stronger, and that's the breaking point maybe for you?
For me, in that fight, there wasn't really a breaking point. For me, I just got caught with a very, very good shot. A shot that would have knocked a lot of people out cold. So it was one of them shots where I stood up, I was like, what's going on there? And then he continued. So, and everyone knows what Beterbiev was like with finishing opponents. So I feel like that's why my corner made that decision. I would have wanted to continue.
I was going to ask you that. Do you look back on that fight and think to yourself, OK, if I hadn't have done this, if I had have done this, what do you think that you could have done better in that fight? Everything?
Yeah, 100%. Because Beterbiev even said it recently, or before his fight with Bivol, that he can tell that I prepared very good for that fight. And I do feel like I've got the skill set, or I've got the tools to beat Beterbiev. I know it sounds crazy for me to say that now. I was up on the scorecards before I got stopped. I'm open to the rematch. I feel like that's one of the most exciting fights in light heavyweight division.
I don't disagree. Do you guys think, given the nature of this fight card, this crescendo fight card, do you think this is the best fight the Saudis, this fight card is the best fight card the Saudis have put on yet.
I think it's the best fight card I've seen.
Yeah.
I've ever seen, actually. When you look down there and you go, you know, down from the top to the bottom, and you're looking at like Buatsi, Callum Smith, even like, but that's not rubbing you on. No, I'm doing it.
It would have been better if it was Anthony Yarde.
Absolutely. But no, but you look and you go, look, that's actually down the bottom of the card.
Yeah.
It is insane, mate. Yeah, you can't deny that.
If it was me against Buatsi, would it be at the bottom of the card?
Definitely not. There you go.
Got to get some of that Saudi money, mate.
It's not, for me, it's not. It is about the money, but it's not. It's about making these fights. I've shown my character. I want to be in these big fights. I fought Beterbiev. Like, I fought Kabayel in Russia. I've always been that person where I'm like,
do you want the winner?
Fight.
Do you want the winner of Callum Smith versus Buatsi?
Yes.
Okay.
We're calling for it here. There you go.
Another fight that's, again, fascinating, but even more so for us because it's got British interest, is Hamza Sheeraz fighting Carlos Adames for the WBC middleweight title.
Yeah, it's a great fight.
That's a fight Hamza can win, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fight that he can win, but Carlos Adames is a decent fighter. He's got a great boxing IQ as well. Switches from orthodox to southpaw, heavy-handed, throws his punches.
But Hamza's at this level, isn't he?
Yeah, well, listen, this is what we're going to... When you're the challenger for a title, right, Carlos Adames has now proven because he's got it and he's got that title. So this is the now coming-of-age fight for Hamza in many ways, as in on this world stage. He's done nothing wrong up till now. We've always talked about him.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time before he wins a world title. He gets that opportunity against Adames. I put him as a favourite, I really do.
It's fascinating.
But
If you
Adames
wanna
is
get-
a great fighter.
He is.
Yeah.
It's fascinating if you want to get a fight for a middleweight title, you can get one, right? So what's Chris Eubank doing? You can get world title shots if you want them, can't you?
Well,
I'm
to be
just
fair
saying.
to be fair to Hamza,
just
I
saying.
mean, he's been calling for that fight, hasn't he, with Chris? You know, that fight never materialised. I'm sure that if Hamza Sheeraz wins this WBC title, you might hear Chris Eubank's name popping up.